So I want to share with you two things. First of all, a beautiful word I heard from my brother yesterday, Yosel. And that is, so Yaakov and Eisav, so they have their encounter, and this is a cosmic encounter, friends, where for a moment there's reconciliation and peace, but then what happens is, this is what we're told, they part ways. Eisav goes to Seir, that's where he lives in Mount Seir, and Yaakov goes to Sukkos, a place called Sukkos. That's the next destination. So here's the insight. It's a Polish word. They're brothers. They're brothers. One went one direction, one went the other direction. So why? Eisav is going to Seir and Yaakov is going to Sukkos. Seir, which is the name of the mountain, it also means a goat. And we all know that on Yom Kippur, one of the primary avodas of Yom Kippur were the two identical goats, of which a lottery was drawn by the high priest. One was offered in the Beis Hamikdash and blood brought into the Holy of Holies, or at least outside. And the other one was cast off the cliff. This is very symbolic of choices in life. They seem on the surface to be identical. And then probe a little bit deeper, this leads you to the abyss, and this leads you to the many layers of meaning. At any rate, all to say, it's symbolic of Yom Kippur. Sukkos. So here's the insight. What kind of Yiddishkeit? The kind of Yiddishkeit that Eisav was exposed to, or believed it was a Yom Kippur Yiddishkeit. Fasting, browbeating, striking of the heart. No, thank you. He's out. If our Yiddishkeit is Yom Kippur Yiddishkeit in that sense, then it's not going to attract our children. Yaakov Sukkos. If a Yiddishkeit is Sukkos, if that's what defines Judaism, Sukkos is celebration and joy and simcha, that will endure. So this is a little insight to explain why Yaakov remained loyal and Eisav didn't. And it's a message to the kind of Yiddishkeit we have to give our children. Yom Kippur is once a year, and it's necessary to have the Yom Kippur. But that shouldn't, in the sense of that shouldn't color and define the whole experience. I always say, high holidays when the shul is packed, I always say, one year I said to everyone, you know why you're not coming back the rest of the year? Because you only come in Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, it's long and boring and fasting. So why should you come back? So you know what? I mean, let's make it. He said, don't come Yom Kippur, come better Sukkah Simchas Torah. Then you'll enjoy it more. We'll see you more often. Let's make a deal. I'll be very happy. The shul will be empty Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, and let's be here on Sukkah. Simple kind of, everyone was laughing. It's kind of true. The association with Yiddishkeit is, if it's a Yom Kippur thing, then it's not attractive. Yeah, we show up once or twice a year, and that's it. That's Eisav. For Yaakov, what defines Yiddishkeit? Joy and simcha. Okay, it's a cute insight, but it has much truth. Agreed. And that's the kind of Yiddishkeit we need to exude and experience, and especially for our children. It's got to be associated not with discipline and punishment. What's Yom Kippur? Punishment, the book of life, and the book of consequences, and the reward of punishment, and do it. If not, you're gonna. That's not the emphasis. It's got to be the joy, the celebration, like the Sukkah embraces us. That's the essence that should convey and be the experience for both ourselves and our children. All right. Another insight now in the parallel between, it's all related. As we compare Yaakov and Eisav, this is what we read. We read that in their dramatic encounter, it's a temporary reconciliation. But then they part ways. Now, in their conversation, in their dialogue, they seem to be saying the same thing. Yaakov is giving presents to Eisav, and Eisav says, I don't need it all. Yeshli Rav, he says, I don't need it, thank you, no thank you. I have many things. And Yaakov says, in response to Esav's overtures, Yeshli Koil, I have everything, or I have all. Let's get the word straight. On the surface, the same thing. I've got plenty, thank you, but I'm fine. But let's look carefully at what they're saying. Yaakov says, Eisav says, Yeshli Rov, I have many things. Many. And Yaakov says, I have koil, I have all. So the simple distinction is, Eisav is boasting, I've got a lot of stuff. I have many things. And Yaakov says, I have all that I need. Humility. That's one distinction. I have a lot. I got lots of stuff. That's Eisav. And Yaakov, Yeshli Koyel, I have all I need. That's one distinction. Going a little bit deeper. Eisav says, I got a lot of things. He's actually kind of on a subconscious level, kind of lamenting. He says, my life is fragmented. There's a lot of things going on. I wear a lot of hats. He was a wealthy man. He had a lot of things to contend to. He had many wives, and he had the battles, and he had businesses, and he had all kinds of stuff going on. And all these obligations. It's a lot of things, and they're all competing for my attention and my time. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting. The first time we meet Eisav, the man's exhausted. The very first time he's come back from the field, and now she says, what is he doing? All kinds of things that one shouldn't do. It's all implicit in where he was. Pleasure, war, fighting, seduction, money. And he comes back exhausted, and the Yaakov, that's where he sells the birthright. He sells that birthright at this moment of utter exhaustion. And why is he exhausted? For the obvious reason. On the contrary, the more we have, the more exhausted. The more worry we have, the more we have to manage, the more we're torn apart, the more obligations. We're wearing different hats all the time. We're in the deal, we've got to be one kind of person. We've got to, I don't have to tell you, friends, out there in the world, you've got to project all different kinds of personas in order to get the end result. Sometimes you've got to play the soft guy. Sometimes you've got to be the tough guy. Sometimes you got to play like you don't know what's going on. So the person, you lull the other guy into a false sense of security, and he doesn't realize, and you realize you notice where there's a faulty line that you're going to exploit, and you play, dumb. He doesn't get. We're wearing hats, masks, all kinds of masks. That's exhausting. It's exhausting to assume all these different roles. That's what Eisav is saying, and that's life. Yaakov says, Yeshli Koil, it's all integrated, it's all together. What does he mean? This is the message for us as Jews. I don't have different roles. I'm not fragmented and wearing different hats. Here I'm the father, here I'm the husband, here I'm in the bedroom, here I'm in the bathroom, here I'm in the business, here I'm traveling, here I'm with the kids. And it's draining me because I've got to get into the whole mindset, a different mindset on every occasion to be able to negotiate it and be successful. That's exhausting. No, I have it all together. What does it mean? I'm a Yid. And I have one goal, serve Hashem. That's all. That's before my eyes always. Hashem wants many things, fine. So, be a father, be a husband, be a businessman, be a friend. All kinds of 613 obligations, if as it were. But they're not depleting and exhausting me because it's all one thing. It's in the equilibrium. In everything, I have only one question. Eibishter, how do you want me? What do I do here? So I'm tapping into a very deep part of me, a very deep, fulfilling part of me. And that is serving you. Let me illustrate this a little bit. Very powerfully. I may have told you the story. I remember as a child, one of the big moments, impressive moments of my life, and I'm sure my friends as well, was the following. This was the 1960, the late 60s. They came to Australia to visit. He had a sister and a brother-in-law there. They celebrated Chassid of Mendel Futafas. Now, for those of you can look him up online, I tell them, look him up, Mendel Futterfass in English, Mendel Futterfass, exactly as it said. Just want to tell you that I heard, you see his face, understand, that when he lived in Kfar Chabad and was in Russia for 20 years, 20 years, his whole life in Russia. He came out in the early 60s. He was 17 years in the various gulags, etc. What was his crime? His crime was he was a leader of the Lubavitch underground, the spiritual underground. So just to tell you his face, when he came out, I was told that when he was not Yisrael, Hasidim, not Chabad, would just come just to look at his face. You see what extraordinary face the man has. I remember when he came to Australia, I'll never forget this. So an assembly was called of the whole school in the big shul. That's where the assemblies used to take place. And Rabbi Groner was leading the assembly and saying as follows: the back of the shul, the last bench in the shul, Rabbi Mendel, it says 11 o'clock in the morning. Rabbi Mendel is still davening. He used to daven at great length, meditation. And Rabbi Groner is speaking in English and doesn't want to say his name. They should know we're talking about him. Tells us, do not turn around. He shouldn't know. He began to tell us and describe a little bit as children, 12-year-olds, 10-year-olds, who Rabbi Mendel was. So here's the amazing thing about him. Just 1 second. Hit that button there. Here was the thing, friends. So Rabbi Mendel, 17 years in labor camps, in prisons, interrogated, beaten. If you would meet him the day after he came out of Russia, he was just one of the boys. He wasn't crushed, and he wasn't this big holy hero. He was simply just, he wouldn't know any of the history. I mean, he is a wonderful person, a big chassid, but he came out completely intact. Sense of humor, regular guy for him. What am I saying? But Mendel lived with one thing. He was in the gulag. His tefillin froze, snapped. Not till he got them. He couldn't use it, couldn't wrap it anymore. She says, Eibishter, you don't want me to put on tefillin? That's okay. I have it in a cup of water. I can make a brach on the water. I can review my studies in my head. I can cheer up the spirits of my fellow inmate. And that's what he did. In other words, he simply asked himself, okay, under the circumstances that I am, so what should I do? And he did what he had to do. Inside his hole, because whatever circumstance he was not stressed out. This is where you have placed me, and I have to do what I can do with that which you granted me. Not more, not less. This is the secret to healthy living. Yaakov says, Yesh li koil. Everything I have, it's all integrated. I'm not torn apart. I'm a servant of Hashem. Everything I have is granted to him. I have to do what I have to do. And the rest of the circumstances, or most of them, are in his hands, not mine. He's not frustrated when things don't go his way, because he doesn't have his way. It's his way. So that whatever happens, it's meant to be. I just know my obligation. It's a very healthy way to live, friends. And really, this is what the story we told before. But it doesn't matter the story. The bottom line is this is what davening is. Why are we davening, friends, 3 times a day? How many times a day do we have to say that there is a God and I love you and believe in you? Or let's rephrase the question. How many times does God have to be told he's wonderful? Why are we davening so often? The answer is because by nature, we're caught up, we'll be EISAV. We're caught up in ourselves and our ego. And it's about me and my accomplishment, and that leads to frustration, anger, and all of the things that the ego is responsible for. 3 times a day, we have to hit the pause about, no, wait a second. There's a creator. There's a purpose. It's all his. Life is his gift. I'm here to partner with him and carry out my duty. And we need a constant meditation reminder, and it's life-saving. After davening, here's the measure. What's the measure if I daven properly? If it was a real davening. If after davening my ego softened a little bit. If something doesn't go my way, and no, you run the world, I could do it. Just like I have to do what I have to do. If I'm a little more giving, a little more sensitive, a little less wrapped up myself, that's a davening. That's the story we told earlier. The guy was beating himself up. Say it with the truth. Mean it. If we mean it, the more we mean it, the more like Yaakov we become. We're a pleasure to be around. Life isn't about competition constantly. Who gets the upper hand, the best word, the final say? That's what it says in Mashiach will come. There's no competition. There's no competition. It's not about me, one-upmanship, not monetarily, not emotionally, not control. It's surrender. Hashem is in control. It's the healthiest way to live. And that's, of course, Shabbos. Shabbos is the greatest gift that we're going to talk about right now. Why I'm going to talk about Shabbos? First of all, it's Erev Shabbos, but particularly because it's connected with the Parshat in many ways. So let's address this briefly. One of the stories in the Parshat, because as we just started saying now, that what is Shabbos? Shabbos is a day where we are forced, if you want to keep the laws, to relinquish control. That's what Shabbos is. Don't manipulate, don't be the mover and shaker. Set it all up before, relinquish that there's a creator. God created the world on the seventh day. It's an incredible gift of a reminder that I'm not in control. Since we're talking about, let me remind you, tonight you're going to make Kiddush, friends. You're going to have the challah on the table. This is what you're going to have. You're going to have 2 challahs. It's going to be on a board or a plate, and it's going to be covered. What is this all about? So the reason that you have bread all together is because in halacha, since we're commanded on Shabbos to eat a meal, in halacha, definition of a meal is bread. Bread's the staff of life. This is true of Shabbos, Yom Tov, Purim. Anytime we eat, or a wedding, or a bris, or a pidyon aben, anytime there's a mitzvah to eat a meal, you should know bread is the main ingredient. Good, that's why there's bread. Why there are 2 breads and why they're covered? To remind us of the manna. The Jews were in the desert for the 40 years. No manna fell, not on Shabbos and not on Yom Tov, but a double portion fell on Erev Shabbos or Erev Yom Tov. How did it fall? It fell with first a layer of dew, then the manna, then a layer of dew to seal in the freshness. That's why we have 2 challahs, because a double portion fell. We don't put it on the table. We put it on a board. That's why the challah board is not just for practical purposes. It's also to represent the layer of dew that was on the bottom, and then we cover the layer of dew on top. There's another reason why we cover the challah, halachically, because normally you sit down to a meal and you're going to drink wine at your meal. The first thing you eat is bread, because bread's more prestigious than wine. And in halacha, when you're eating foods, there's a pecking order, literally, what you eat first, and bread is the number 1. So normally we'd have bread and then we'd drink wine. But here we're ignoring the bread because we're making Kiddush, because we want to declare the sanctity of the day over a cup of wine, because it's a joyous day and wine's a symbol of joy. We're ignoring the bread, so we cover it. Incredible message here. Sensitivity. We're supposed to apply this to a fellow human being. Normally we'd eat the bread, we're not. So out of sensitivity, we cover it. That's another reason why we cover. But going back to the manna, was that clear? Because we're making Kiddush, we're drinking wine. So again, during the week, if you're eating wine at your meal and you're eating bread, first you'll eat bread, then you make a bracha on the wine. But again, the other reason is the manna. So why are we invoking the question? Why are we invoking the manna every Friday? It's thousands of years ago. Good luck to them. That's how it all began. It was wonderful. 40 years in the desert. God provided. I'm doing the work. I'm working hard. The bread on the table is thanks to my effort. So comes Shabbos and says, you made the vessel. True. But really, it's still manna from heaven. Hashem's still the provider. Nothing has changed. It's only veiled through the channels of nature, which we have to make. We make the vessel, but the blessing is God is the provider. And every Friday night, that's what Shabbos is all about. Hands off my world. Recognize that I am the creator and you are partnering with me. So how does the whole Shabbos begin? With making kiddush and the two breads on the table as a visual, practical reminder. The whole meal begins this way. It's manna from heaven. It's manna from heaven. And before we make kiddush, we say the Eishes Chayim. And what's the many meanings to that? One of them is, my wife is a gift. I don't own her. I don't own my children, even though we say my wife. Granted, it's a gift and a privilege to be married. And thank you, Hashem. And certainly, on every simple level, you're sitting down to your meal, who prepared this? So it starts off with thank you, starts off with acknowledgement, just like our day starts off with Maida'an, he starts off with thank you. Our Shabbos begins with the thank you. Thank you, Hashem, for my bread, my parnasa. Thank you for my wife and family. Which we even, Eishes Chayil, you said it before you ate the bread. That's the first thank you. Right after Kiddush, thank you to my wife. I'm sorry, before even we make Kiddush, the very first thing. We welcome the angels, and then we thank Hashem for the gift of our wife, Eishes Chayil. Then we thank for the parnasa. It's all about gratitude. It's all about recognizing that it's manna. And the truth is, you would know this better than me, because that's not my world. I'm not in the world of business. But just like the manna was miraculous, you see often in business where things happen and you can see God's in charge. It's so clear. It's so clear it's coming from above. I thought this, I thought that, and this happened, and oh. It's all the manna from heaven. Especially, friends, if we consider like where we are in history, how Jews, conditions that our ancestors, our forefathers for thousands of years lived, and how things have changed today. It's like transparently prosperity, manna, compared to the toil they went and the results, the meager living abundance that we have. This is all pre-Mashiach, post-Holocaust. God's beginning the process of redemption and the blessings flowing down. Shefa, bracha, batzlacha. It's like unbelievable, the condition with Jews all over the world, everywhere, relative to the last 2,000 years of exile. It's all the last decades only, since the Holocaust, that this opened up, this blessing. So it all begins with gratitude. And what's the net result? The result is Yeshli Koil. It's all integrated, it's all one. I'm not fragmented, I'm not torn apart. My life is together. Now we're going to stop here, but it's all connected to the two names of Yaakov and Yisrael. So Mr. Hashem, next week, we'll talk about these two names and what they mean. See, when it comes to Avram, when his name was changed from Avram to Avram, he's never called Avram again. It's always Avraham. Sarai was changed from Sarai to Sarah. He never called her Sarai again. She's called Sarah. But Yaakov's name is changed to Yisrael. We still keep on calling him Yaakov because there's two names. They convey two dimensions to our being, to our service of God. It's a Shabbos and the weekday. And God willing, we'll look at that next week. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining.
Shabbos, a big Yeshukaya.
See you, yeah. Thank
Good
you.
Shabbos, Rabbi.
See you later. Good Shabbos, Jeremy.
Good Shabbos, everyone.
Ari.
Thanks,
I think Lucy's in Israel now, yeah.